Hey, Sip and Talkers. It's your host, Joe, and with me as always, Sunny.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to The Dive. So the other day, I was trying to explain baseball to my friend from England. I mean, innings, RBIs, the whole shebang.
Oh, boy.
And he just looks at me, completely blank, and goes, so it's like rounders, but longer. You've got to tell me you've had those moments, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I once spent, seriously, like 20 minutes trying to explain what a potluck dinner is.
No.
Yeah. To someone from a country where you always just bring your own food. The look of pure confusion was, well, memorable. But, you know, those moments, even the funny ones, they kind of touch on something important.
Yeah.
Which is our topic today. Why debate actually matters. Sort of the core of what we try to do here.
Yeah.
Digging into different viewpoints, even when it feels like we're speaking totally different languages sometimes.
Exactly. And today, we're actually venturing a bit further afield. Some of our listeners in Taiwan asked us to take a look at a pretty lively online discussion that's been happening over there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, apparently there was a bit of a, let's say, disagreement between a content creator named Salon, I think it's pronounced Salon.
Sounds about right.
And some Taiwanese internet users. It apparently all kicked off on Threads under one of his videos. So what's the story? What actually went down? What were the main criticisms?
Okay, so, well, it seems to have started with one user calling Salon a foreigner with a mainland China accent. Now, they did apologize later, clarifying it was meant as satire.
Satire, okay.
Yeah, aimed at fans who, in the user's view, kind of overvalued Salon's opinions just because he's a foreigner who speaks Chinese. They felt it inflated his credibility, like from 100% to 120% was the phrase used. So less a direct hit on Salon himself, maybe, and more a critique of the fan-based perception.
Okay, so a bit of a weird angle, maybe targeting the fans, but still calling out the accent like that feels kind of loaded, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
What else did they say?
Well, another big one was the claim that Salon only brings negative influence to Taiwan.
Oof. How so?
Because supposedly, many of his viewers are supporters of Ko Wen-che. You know, the one sometimes called Little Grass. That's a nickname for his followers.
Yeah.
This user claimed the comments they saw were dominated by these Little Grass opinions.
Right, so it shifts from who he is or how he speaks to the impact of his content framed through a political lens. And how did Salon take the accent comment and this Little Grass thing?
Not, well, understandably. Regarding the accent, he basically asked, you know, what does that even have to do with the video, which was apparently about labor issues.
Okay, yeah. Seems irrelevant.
Right. And he pushed back on the negative connotation and the automatic link to Ko Wen-che supporters. Then, for the negative influence part, he actually posted screenshots from his comment section.
Oh, receipts.
Yeah, basically arguing that, look, most comments were actually discussing Taiwanese political culture, the nature of debate itself, you know, broader topics, not just Ko Wen-che stuff. He called the user's approach of picking out single comments very dishonest, which, you know, highlights that whole selective evidence thing you see online.
Yeah, cherry-picking comments. Classic online argument tactic. Doesn't really prove much if it's not representative. Were there other criticisms flying around?
Oh, yeah. The user also stated pretty bluntly that foreigners who don't understand the Taiwan situation shouldn't pretend to know and talk nonsense about politics.
Wow.
They elaborated, basically saying only people in the situation, meaning Taiwanese people, really have the right to comment. And they specifically said Salon couldn't understand Taiwanese politics from that perspective simply, and I quote, because you are not Taiwanese.
That's quite the gatekeeping stance. So your birthplace determines your right to have an opinion on politics there. Seems pretty exclusionary. How did Salon handle that one?
Well, he seemed genuinely confused by the contradiction. He pointed out the user had actually said he speaks well,
right,
but then immediately argued he shouldn't speak at all on the topic. It's that weird disconnect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Acknowledging someone can communicate effectively, but then saying their background disqualifies their opinion.
Well,
it makes you wonder what assumptions are really driving that.
I can absolutely see how frustrating that would be. It's like saying, yeah, you talk good, but shut up anyway. So what about the point that political debate in Taiwan is meaningless? That sounds pretty bleak.
Yeah, that was a really central claim. The user felt that because Taiwan's political parties have such fundamentally different directions, one was even described as completely heading towards the enemy. There's just no point debating, no common ground, no possibility of reaching a conclusion. They also argued that Taiwanese voters don't make choices based on reasoned debate anyway, but just on party affiliation. The example given was, because he is DPP, so I hate him. It paints a really pessimistic picture.
Yeah, that suggests a super polarized environment where people are just stuck in their camps. How did Ceylon respond to that?
He strongly disagreed. He argued, look, the purpose of political debate isn't always to get everyone to agree. It's often about informing the public, laying out different policy options so people can make informed choices.
Makes sense.
And he also made the point that good debaters can actually sway undecided voters, maybe even change the minds of people on the other side. But here's where it got really interesting.
Go on.
He saw a huge irony in the user's argument that Taiwanese voters are irrational because of party loyalty. Ceylon felt that view actually proved his own point about Taiwan maybe lacking a strong debate culture. He suggested the user had sort of become an example of the very problem someone so entrenched they couldn't hear his actual message about the value of discussion.
Wow, that's turning the tables quite effectively.
Yeah. And he also added, quite pointedly, that when you post things on public platforms, you've got to take responsibility for what you say.
Absolutely. Sounds like Sion really tried to engage, even when the comments were pretty harsh. What was the general vibe online? Did people pile on? I bet it got heated.
Well, it definitely sparked a lot of reaction. From what we could see, many people seemed to side with Ceylon, expressing frustration with the user's arguments. Comments mentioned feeling deja vu, like they'd heard these kinds of arguments before. Others praised Ceylon's patience and rationality. Someone even said they'd probably get agitated after just a few sentences trying to argue back. Another comment called it the best example of logical death online.
Yeah.
Basically saying Ceylon just systematically took apart the user's points.
Logical death, huh? Intense.
Yeah, but there was also this undercurrent, maybe less constructive, of people just wanting to see a fight. One comment even used the phrase blood flowing like a river. They were hoping for a really nasty online clash.
Yikes. Yeah, the internet definitely loves a good spectacle sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Forget understanding, let's just watch the fireworks.
Pretty much.
But okay, stepping back from the immediate drama, this whole Ceylon thing really does bring up bigger questions, right? Like, why do some Taiwanese netizens feel foreigners can't understand Taiwan? And what does this exchange maybe reveal about perceived skills in debate and expressing opinions online?
Exactly. And that leads us right into the core of why debate in all its forms is so important and how it connects directly to what we try to do here on the show. It's really not just about winning an argument or scoring points.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Why is debate so crucial? Lay it out for us.
Well, first off, and maybe most fundamentally, debate forces us to think critically.
Right.
You can't just state an opinion. You have to examine your own assumptions, look for the flaws in your logic, and then back up your case with, actual evidence and reason. Think about when we discussed the U.S.-China trade war. We weren't just accepting headlines. We were debating, okay, who really won or lost here? What were the intentions behind these policies? What are the long-term effects likely to be? Debate builds that analytical muscle. It stops you from just accepting things like, say, China claiming victory and makes you ask, okay, but based on what?
Totally. It's about active engagement, not just passive reception of information, questioning things.
Exactly. And second, engaging in debate, like real good faith debate, can actually build understanding and empathy. To really debate someone, you have to try and see the issue from their side, even if you fundamentally disagree.
Right. Put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah. Take, for instance, the different perspectives on Taiwanese identity. The you versus Ariel discussions you sometimes hear about, especially across generations. Debating those ideas, listening to the arguments, helps you grasp why different groups might define being Taiwanese differently. What historical or cultural factors are at play. It's not about erasing differences, but maybe fostering a bit more mutual understanding. Same with something like China's surveillance culture. A proper debate helps you understand the arguments for stability versus the arguments about rights violations.
That makes total sense. You don't have to agree with the destination, but understanding the path someone took to get there is valuable.
Precisely. And third, debate is often a major driver of social progress. Big policy changes, social movements, they rarely happen in a vacuum. They emerge from public discussion and debate. Think about ongoing debates around U.S.-China tariffs or U.S.-Taiwan trade negotiations. Different interests clash, arguments are made, and hopefully policy evolves. Even environmental issues, like that polite waste example in Taiwan public debate, helps bring issues to light and push for more sustainable practices. Without that debate, we can just get stuck.
So it's not just talk. It's talk that can actually lead to action and change things.
Exactly. Fourth, it really sharpens our communication and persuasion skills. When you have to actually argue for something coherently, you learn to articulate complex ideas clearly. You mentioned explaining baseball. You need to translate that passion and complexity into terms someone else understands. That skill is vital everywhere. Work, politics, just everyday life.
Yeah, getting the idea out of your head and into someone else's in a way that clicks. It's harder than it sounds sometimes.
Definitely. And finally, debate is crucial as our culture and technology keep evolving. We've talked about AI before, the ethical questions around AI-generated content, copyright, truthfulness. These things need serious debate. We need to hash out rules and norms that actually reflect our values. Debate helps make sure technology serves us, not the other way around.
Okay, so it's not some dusty old formal thing. Debate is really woven into how we think, how we understand each other, how society moves forward, how we communicate, and even how we handle new tech.
You got it. And the research we looked into really supports this from all sorts of angles. That 2023 Academia Sinica research, for example, it specifically pointed out how online political talk shows and, significantly, those online discussions in Taiwan, like in news comment sections, social media, they actually provide a space for diverse opinions to clash.
Huh. Even the comment sections.
Yeah, they found it actually helps people get a better handle on complex stuff, like the U.S.-China trade situation or Taiwan's international participation. It encourages that critical thinking we talked about, makes you question biases, like maybe that narrative of China just automatically winning the trade war.
That's fascinating. So even the messy online world can have an upside for public understanding.
It seems so. And then there was a 2020 study focusing on political commentary on online news platforms. It found a major driver for people jumping into debates online is what they called opposition motivation.
Opposition motivation,
meaning people comment because they want to push back against reporting they see as biased or viewpoints they strongly disagree with. It shows debate, even online, is a vital channel for expressing dissatisfaction and trying to start a dialogue. Interestingly, the more people disagreed and the more attention they paid, the more likely they were to comment. Debate sparks engagement.
Right, that urge to jump in and say, wait a second, that's not right, or here's another way to look at it.
Exactly. Then shift over to academia. Those 2024 articles from 104 Job Market and Freshman Researcher, they stressed how vital it is to clearly argue your case and provide evidence when applying to grad school. Your research proposal, recommendation letters, they basically framed it as a mini debate. You have to persuade the committee your research is valuable.
Huh. So even getting into grad school boils down to winning a debate, persuading the gatekeepers.
In a way, yeah. And related to that, the Taiwan Academic Ethics Education Resource Center points out how crucial debate is within research itself for verifying hypotheses, checking if ideas hold water. Falsifying data is obviously unethical, which underlines the need for honest, evidence-based debate.
It keeps coming back to making your case clearly and honestly based on facts.
It does. And it's not just academic ivory towers. That 2022 IASC Knowledge Sharing Symposium, it tackled how debate is needed to balance competing interests when sharing things like open data versus indigenous knowledge.
That's tricky territory.
Yeah, very. Their example was public health data. During emergencies, you need a robust debate about privacy rights versus the public good when deciding what gets shared and how.
Super relevant example, especially now. Debate helps navigate those really tough ethical calls in a fast-changing world.
Absolutely. And even in the tech world, like the 2025 Cyber Agent AI Lab training materials, they emphasize using debate-style knowledge sharing, things like code reviews, discussing research papers critically. It helps improve technical skills and, crucially, helps prevent research bias.
So whether it's coding or research, that critical back and forth challenging assumptions, it just leads to a stronger outcome.
That's the idea. Sharpening, thinking through reasoned discussion. You know, it reminds me of trying to explain some complex work thing to my partner once. I was using all the jargon, feeling very clever. And they just looked at me and said, okay, pretend I'm 5. What are you actually saying? It was humbling. But it was a good reminder that clarity, making someone else understand, is the real goal. A mini debate that taught me about communication.
Oh, I totally get that. I remember trying to explain the offside rule in soccer to my dad. He's a huge American football guy. Diagrams, hand gestures, the works. He just kept saying, but why can't the guy just run forward? What's the point?
Yeah.
It really drove home how much our own background shapes how we see things and how vital it is to find common ground, use analogies, whatever it takes. These little everyday debates, they really show why clarity and trying to see the other side matter so much.
Exactly. And those everyday moments really underscore the value of debate for clarifying our own thinking, too, and maybe spotting when our logic is a bit shaky, which, like we said, is kind of the heart of our sip and talk idea informal but hopefully insightful conversation.
So wrapping this all up then, it really sounds like debate is so much more than just shouting online or winning points. It seems absolutely fundamental. Critical thinking, understanding others, driving progress, communicating better, navigating this complex world.
That's a pretty good summary. And maybe, a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. When we talk about things that touch on national identity or cultural differences, like in that Sealand situation, how do we strike that balance? How do we value our own perspective while still being genuinely open to learning from people who come from a different place, have different experiences? It's a tough question.
Definitely something to mull over. Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive. We really hope you found this exploration of why debate matters useful, maybe even sparked some thoughts.
Yeah, hope so.
And hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, please do hit that subscribe button for the Sip and Talk podcast. Don't miss our next dive. And while you're clicking around, definitely go check out our good friend Micky's YouTube channel. You won't regret it.
Yeah, check out Micky. And until next time, keep your discussions thoughtful and maybe, a little less aiming for blood flowing like a river online. Just a thought.
Cheers, everyone. Catch you next time.